Hey everyone, welcome to the Eclectic Handyman. Today we're going to be mounting a 5-inch Craftsman Vise onto a Craftsman Workbench that has a 1.5-inch butcher block on top. So all I've done in preparation for this is I went ahead and used the vise in place to mark the holes, not only with a pencil, but I actually drilled through the holes in place because I didn't want anything to shift. This isn't one of those times that you can mess up and re-drill quite easily. So I kept the vise in place. I drilled starter holes, then finished off the holes so they'd be in the right location, as you can see. And I went to Lowe's and I got some nice bolts here to mount them in. I've got a lock washer and a washer. They will go straight down in here. Again, I used a 3/8 inch drill bit for this. They will go down on the underside, and then I've got these washers, these lock washers to go underneath. So I'll put those, drop the bolts down into it, prop this butcher block up, tighten them down from the bottom side, and be done. So let's get at it. There's probably a whole bunch of ways you could do this, get even more sophisticated. I propped up a 2x4 right there under the bench at the weight of the vise itself, able to drop these bolts down on in, because otherwise it's going to be a little awkward to do this on the floor and have to lift this up. It's only temporary, just enough to get the nuts on here, lock it down, compress those washers, get a good tight bond, and go from there. It's probably worth noting there are at least 100 ways to mount this. Some folks are going to be a little more industrious. You can put a metal plate, longer bolts, extra wood on the bottom. It just depends on what you're doing. I do a lot of around the house eclectic work where I just need something that I can hold in place. I'm not usually torquing 200 pounds, pulling on the bench. It doesn't mean that I didn't want to effort some tremendous support here. It's just a matter of that you might have feedback that depending on the type of project you do, you may want to add additional support or additional measures to make sure there's extra strength. But this should be significant enough for what I need for my project. So let's go ahead and add these nuts on and tighten them down. So I'm able just to use two 9/16 wrench for this, one on the bottom and one on the top to support it. Obviously, if you have an additional hand around to support the bench while you do this, it could be ideal. But anyway, I'm just going to put the camera down while I turn these wrenches. Already tightened down this bolt, nice solid pull on that, especially with that lock washer and the lock nut. So continue on, tighten these down, and we'll be done here in a second. And there you have it. We are all done. All bolts are secured. And we've got this vise mounted to our workbench. And as far as location, basically did it so anything that was mounted in the vise would just barely clear the bench. Now, if you've already mounted it and you happen to mount it back too far, you can always put a backing plate on here to bump up whatever project you're working on. So that's it. That took probably 20 minutes tops to drill the holes, mount it, and get our Craftsman vise mounted to our Craftsman workbench. Hope this helped, and we'll see you next time on the Eclectic Handyman.